Okay, good morning or afternoon, whenever you're watching the video. So I'm starting in with, actually, I just bought a tube of phthalo blue, and I'm testing it out to see the transparency at a very, very diluted state. It actually makes a nice background, like a backlit skylight. Um, so I think I'm going to use that from now on. All right, so I'm massing in. Now this is a continuation of the pen and ink drawing that we did a few days ago. Um, so we already have the line down. So a lot of the drawing is complete. So actually all the drawing is complete. The only thing we have to do now is carefully add the halftones and shadow shapes where they need to be. So I'm going pretty liberal with my washes here and trying to get a good base tone and just going over everything as as well as thickly as I can get. The washes are not fully saturated, but they're pretty dark, and I am working on an incline here, an angled palette. Easel, and that's it. I'm just trying to get that light effect in here. That little bit, you'll see, I do go over this quite a bit. The colors that I'm using here are ultramarine blue and burnt umber. I think there's a little sienna in there as well, just to kind of warm it up a bit. Okay, and to warm it up even more sienna, because it was like an interesting interplay. There was warms right next to cools. The warm light was kind of like emanating from the reflective light off the street, and so that's why I wanted to go a little bit more intense there, or I should say a little bit more warmer. Okay, and this is where you got to kind of feel things out. Understand that this is going to get dark. Now I'm just going darker. I'm still working basically wet into wet here, and just trying to get a base tone here. Now the building that's between the arch and the foreground building, notice I left that white. Okay, because that's where the sunlight is hitting. Okay, we can actually see that shaft of light. Now, while that's wet, I'm going to be dropping in plenty of different colors in there. This is the time to be creative. While the paint is wet, you can just keep dropping in other tones. Now here, I want to try to get a nice golden color. I don't want to go too juvenile on the colors. I want a little tinge of yellow. That's why I actually pulled it out, right? See, so I blotted that out with a paper towel. Now I'm going back and I'm establishing that darker blend right there. And so adding more warmth to that arch. Again, it's just ambient light, reflective light in that little vestibule there. And here we have a little bit more interest in the foreground, and going back to that, I seem to I'm really looking to get that that contrast there on the top of the arch. I want to have that feeling that that its mast is a little grayer on top, and it gets a little warmer as it goes down into yellow. The yellows that I used were cadmium yellow and yellow ochre. Okay, so now I'm adding a little bit of red to the awnings. That red is actually kind of brought down with a little bit of burnt sienna and a little bit of ultramarine blue. I didn't want it to be like in your face, really intense red. I wanted to keep it basically a neutral. And it gets a little redder. I add a little bit more pigment to the paint right now, and seeing that I'm just trying to get light and shadow. Right, so we have the bottom planes there, so we can feel there's a top light coming down. Okay, this is underneath. This is a deep shadow, and it's really dark. I mean, it's super dark. So, and I'll be going back and forth over this as this progresses. Now this is sped up about 4 times, and I think the whole video is 20 minutes and 40 seconds, so it's just short of 21 minutes. I believe this whole painting took me about an hour. I'll have to say like an hour and a half, because I came back, my battery was dying. I came back and then I finished. Basically, I went into the people. So when you see me starting to paint the people, well, you'll see that the scene will change because I had to recharge my phone. But now I'm trying to get these areas dark. I still want to get some contrast on the table and the girl, but I want to keep her recessed too. Like, I don't want her to pop out. I want to. That's why I'm going over her like I am. And you'll see I'll go back later on. As you can hear in the background, my laundry's done. All right, so getting that area. Now, I'm really trying to go for that light. Now, just beyond that last arch, there's a nice open space. It looks like it's another wall, probably the wall of the city. Okay, but that's receiving a lot of light. That's opened up there. And yeah, working in some of the greens in the plant stands and the topiary to the left. Going back, adding a little bit more definition, okay, to that. And I don't want it too perfect, so I blotted it out a little bit. Now here I put my hand there because I didn't want the water to go to the left. I wanted to kind of concentrate it right there. I needed to get this a little darker. It just wasn't dark enough there. I'm adding, you can see that I'm blotting in other color, right? So there's ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, almost like in the same wash. And these are the things that we can do in watercolor. This is how we get interest and variation in color. It just makes the painting more interesting than having one flat color. All right. We can't, scumble colors on. So this is how we get our color shifts and texture. All right, adding more blue in the shadow, which stands to reason because I wanted to put that blue right up against the yellow. For obvious reasons, the blue right next to the yellow makes the yellow light lighter. Okay, it actually accentuates the yellow, the light effect, by having the blue right next to it. Right, so these are color, basic color theory. Processes, whatever you want to call them, and that's what we try to do in watercolor. Now, those shutters were kind of on the green side on the bottom, the first floor, the third floor. They were a little bluer, so I'm going to add that in. I think that's a nice tone. It offsets the red of the awning. Now, I could have gone really red, but you have to remember, we're painting basically an alleyway with no direct sunlight. Okay, it's all basically one big shadow. The only effect light that we're seeing is that shaft right there in the building that's squeezed in between the arch and the front building on the right side. Yeah, so I'm adding some local color to the stands. So in essence, what I'm doing too is, the line is done, it's established. So I'm finding areas where, okay, I want to get a little something there, a shape. I'm basically filling in as if I would just be working, filling in like a coloring book kind of. But here, yeah, we're doing a coloring book kind of approach to this, but we're also adding other. We're also adding color. We're adding, texture. So, although in essence, it is like painting, within, the line. Uh, we're not we're not like slaves to that line. Like we can add more if you feel like you need to add more lines in the composition for whatever reason. Maybe you missed a couple of lines that help the composition in the drawing stage. You can always add them back. In fact, because this is this urban sketching kind of approach, when this dries, you can go back with the ink and restate some of the lines. The black really doesn't change much. It's permanent, so the washes that go over, I'm looking at mine, and they're not even bothered by the transparent washes. So there's nothing. You can see them. You can accentuate them a little bit more if you wanted to add some little detail. Again, that wasn't in. I think on mine, I didn't go back and accentuate the lines of the pavement. I had these kind of diamond shapes originally, and since they were so light in my drawing, they look good in the drawing, but of course they're going to lose any kind of contrast when you put a wash like this in. Now I'm going back onto the people. I'm getting closer to the end of this segment of the video. There's just a little soft transition, but I'm thinking about, I just painted right over these people. Like, I didn't even think about, their shapes or anything, which I should have. I should have worked that shape in, but it's okay. I still have a little reprieve. I can do that now as long as because I'm going to be painting the man's shirt right there in the middle. Definitely want to get his shirt nice. I think it's a turquoise color in the end. Um, and this painting, it's interesting. I just noticed this, but when I worked it, this was not a deliberate, thought out thing. But the man walking towards the girl in the foreground, you know, they could be meeting for lunch or something. So it looks like there's a little narrative working into this painting, unbeknownst to me, till just right now. Um, he could have been a little closer too, but you can do things like this in watercolor. Why not? It's done in other types of painting. Um, and you should always try to go for a narrative, which means instead of like not painting people in a high trafficked alleyway in, I think this is Cortona, Italy, that would be foolish. Especially like in situations like this, if it was like nighttime, a nocturne, maybe a few less people, but actually there'd be more people on the streets in Italy. All right, so I'm going back. I just added some local color, to her head. Now here, now we transition in. Okay, my battery is charged, and I'm going in. I want more color in the foliage, and I'm adding some shadow shapes. And yeah, I just, maybe that green could have been a little subdued, but I don't mind it. Now, what I did before, and I didn't talk about this, but I put a little bit of a purple and a light cerulean, but very, very subtle wash. There was like this shadow, and now just before, I put a little bit of a warm yellow. It was a very, very diluted yellow. Now, back to the guy. There it is. There's the turquoise shirt, and I'm massing in his face, his arms, and yes, it is semi-opaque paint because there's no way I can paint around these figures. There's a couple in the background holding hands. I just want to get a suggestion of the people. The girl in the foreground is still delineated, and she looks okay there. And yeah, I kept the people basically in a neutral. I gave them a little bit of color, not a lot. I mean, I think because the guy's shirt is that turquoise blue, he actually becomes a focal point again because, well, his placement, color, um, and it's kind of that blue is kind of balancing out the red too as well. So now I'm just trying to put some detail in the shoe that she's wearing, a little bit going back, adding some accent notes to the girl. Yeah, and going around the detail, I'm looking for places where I didn't get to paint. That light has light just beaming right through it, so I needed to add a little bit more light there. This light, not so much, but light was kind of emanating through. Um, because the light was basically skimming off of it out to the side. Now those were not in the photograph, or at least the top one wasn't. I just added that in because I felt it needed it. Yeah, so there's actually a car way in the distance there. It looks like it's a police car, I think. Um, Not quite sure. There were these really interesting lamps that were kind of on these big hooks, and they kind of overarched over the table. Nice touch there. Again, now all the drawing is done. Again, this actually makes watercolor a little easier because you have your line down. If you keep your line on the sketchy side, you can get a very loose rendering. You could also get a very tight rendering too, and you can do the same thing. You just have to be a little bit, careful, more careful with your washes if you're going to go for a more, tighter um, look or approach to your painting. Um, and I'm just kind of Greeking in, as I used to call it, some of the type on the awning. Just adding some opaque detail, just for some interest. Some more color, just spotting some color there. I'm wondering if I go back over, I think I go back over the, and we still got about 18 seconds left, I think. And yeah, so what am I doing now? I'm thinking about something. All right, more reds, a little bit more color to the man. I think he needed to go a little darker. Some shadows underneath the flower boxes. I think I do make the foreground a little darker as well at some point. And here, darkening the shadows and trying to keep that whole area on the darker side. And then you'll see at some point, here it is, I turn it upside down. Now the reason for this is because I want the wash to, to drive downward, right? So that in essence, when I flop it over in a few seconds, it will be right side. And there it is. And I think we have, I don't know if this is finished yet. No, still some more detail. Or shadow shapes, I should say. So what I'm doing is I'm putting a little color down, a dark tone, and then I'm putting water down, just letting it kind of drip a little bit. And I see that actually he was wearing shorts. I think I go back and add some shorts to him. It looks like he's wearing no pants. I think I go back, not sure. I think the background is pretty much done. Re-emphasizing the colors on the top windows there, putting a little bit of a cool tone on the windows that are in the building that's receiving all that light. More green, more interest. Let's see. And that's it. I'm taking off the tape for the big unveiling. It was always fun. I think I signed it, I believe. And that's it. And that's the painting. So I hope you guys enjoyed this urban sketching. I'll see you next week. Bye.